Call the select board meeting of Tuesday, November 10th to order. And the first item is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Pick your second, Kathleen. And I'm not aware of any changes to the agenda. Has anybody got any requested changes, or is there anything I'm missing? Seeing none, all in favor of the agenda as drafted, signify by saying aye. Or thumbs up. There we go. Thank you. God, I miss some in-person meetings. I am told by a good source that Pfizer's going to get us a good vaccine. We'll be back to in-person meetings. Next is approval of the minutes of our October 27th regular select board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any requested changes to the draft minutes? Wow. Okay. So all in favor of approving the minutes as drafted, signify with thumbs up. Okay. Next is citizen comments. And Chris, do we have anybody in that's got a hand raised to comment on something that's not otherwise covered in the agenda?
I see no raised hands at the moment, Brian.
Okay, I'm going to move on then. And next is accepting the resignation of our select board member, Victor Nuolo. As everybody has seen in the packet, Victor submitted a resignation letter to me and to the town, and he explained why at this time he was unable to continue to serve, and so a motion to accept his resignation would be in order. I know, nobody wants to accept his resignation, huh?
Nope, don't want to
Nope.
do that.
Not gonna do it.
Nope. Sorry, I've been thinking
Rejected.
about this. No.
Nick, can you give the board your Scottish line there?
For which one, laddie?
The one
However, I do want to know, can we make an informal, non-binding motion? And that motion is due to his experience, institutional knowledge, deep comprehension of good governance, and the fact that he's a loved member of the community and a valued member of this board, we respectfully decline to accept Victor Nuovo's letter of resignation.
I'll
Can
second
we
that.
vote on a non-binding resolution?
I don't see why not.
All in favor? That's your job. No, I guess, well, sadly, I was sitting there thinking about this, and when I heard from that Victor was going to do that, and I fully appreciate the guy has got so many things going. And, I was sitting there thinking that whenever I make a motion, it's because it's something that I believe is best for Middlebury. And when I vote against a motion, it's because I equally believe that it's, in my opinion, it's best for the town. However, this evening, for the first time, I'm either going to make a motion or vote affirmative for a motion that I don't believe is really in the best interest of the town. It's a motion to accept Victor's resignation. However, while I don't want Victor to resign, I've known him long enough to know that he does not undertake a decision like this without extensive thought and deliberation. He is, after all, our board's philosopher. And therefore, I respect his decision, desire to focus more time on his many undertakings and his writings. And look, Victor's going to be 89 years old, I think, tomorrow. And, he has more enthusiasm and passion for knowledge than many people half his age. I mean, the guy just amazes me. And I also was sitting there thinking, he's the last board member who was seated when I first came on more than 11 years ago. And I was a green board member, as we all have been at some time. I had the enthusiasm, but I had essentially no expertise on what it really meant to be a governing official. And Victor wanted me to succeed, and as he does every one of us who come on this board. And so he was always been there to provide friendly guidance, because he knows if we do this job well, it's good for Middlebury. And he's always been available when any of us have needed to discuss some aspect or get a second opinion on a topic that came before us. I've always found him, he's been willing to let me know when he believed that my thought process was appropriate, but then equally, doesn't hesitate to let me know when I'm off the mark. And, sometimes even when he agreed with me, I'd find he would challenge my assumptions just to make sure that I was confident that I'd give the topic the deserved contemplation. He has a way of making sure that we govern by logic and not wild enthusiasm. And it's something I've just always admired about the guy. I said earlier, he's passionate about good governance and has been a constant voice of reason to make sure that Middlebury is an exceptionally well-run town, and it is. And he deserves recognition for all that he's undertaken to help, make this happen. He was influential in the discussions and events that allowed the Cross Street Bridge, the town office building, the municipal recreation building to occur. And he was a steadfast guide and assisted in the leadership through the construction project in town. And I always found that, when we have the live meetings, more than one occasion, Victor and I would walk across the street to Two Brothers for a wee Scottish dram. And before we'd enter, he would frequently just stop and we'd look across the circle of the town office building, and he'd always have this big smile and say something to the effect of, "This town is a good place and it's well governed." And, he just always was passionate about that good governance. And so, I don't want to vote for the acceptance of Victor's letter of resignation. I'll accept it. And like each of us, I'm honored to have called him a colleague and importantly, a dear friend that we all have the utmost respect and love for. So, Victor, thanks for all that you've done for this wonderful community and to your wonderful wife, Betty, who has also contributed so much to the town and to the state. So we wish you well, continue to be well. And with that, I guess I'll reluctantly make the motion to accept the letter of resignation for Victor Novo from the Select Board.
Second.
All in favor, signify with a thumbs up.
It's going up real slow,
Yeah, it is.
but it was an honor.
Nick, you put that so well as an elder statesman of the board now, and
Oh, thanks a lot, Brian.
much you feel too old, but it's been an honor to serve with Victor, and I think we all have appreciated him and his passion for deliberation and what that means to the process of governance has really been helpful for me. With that, I'd like to read a recognition from the town of Middlebury. A resolution recognizing the service of Victor Nuovo. Whereas we, the Select Board of the town of Middlebury, take this opportunity to recognize the service of Victor Nuovo, who has served the town of Middlebury with distinction as a member of the Select Board from March 2006 to January 2014, and again from March 2016 to January 2020. And whereas during his tenure on the Select Board, Victor served on many town committees, including the Personnel Committee, the Town School Committee, the Town Offices Recreation Center Building Committee, and the Library Building Committee. And whereas, as a board member, Victor represented the Select Board on the Addison County Transit Resource Commission and the Middlebury Area Land Trust. And whereas Victor has played a role in several major projects within the town, such as the construction of the Cross Street Bridge, the new town offices and recreation center, and the replacement of the railroad bridges on Main Street and Merchants Row. And whereas Victor has maintained an attitude of professionalism and courtesy and genuine caring for the concerns of citizens and the town. Whereas Victor's love of knowledge and commitment to truth has been both a solid foundation and a guiding light for many of the Select Board's discussions about important community issues. Therefore, be it resolved that the town of Middlebury celebrates the commitment and hard work of Victor Nuovo and thanks him for his extraordinary dedication and outstanding service to the Middlebury community. Signed, the remaining 6 soldiers of the Middlebury Select Board. Victor, our hearts go out to you and much appreciation. And we're sorry we can't do this in person, Victor, and as I promised, we will be taking you out to dinner. A tradition that has been more recently a part of the Select Board. Next is a discussion of the process for replacement, and in accordance with 24 VSA section 127-308-308, we need to authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to advertise for individuals interested in seeking appointment to fill the vacancy created by Victor's resignation until town meeting in March 2021. And based on the notification requirements of section 127-308, Kathleen proposes the following schedule for the appointment process. Today, this evening, the Select Board would authorize Kathleen to advertise for candidates. On November 12th, the legal ad would appear in the Addison Independent's Thursday edition. On December 8th, the Select Board would place names of interested candidates into nomination during its regular meeting. On December 15th, the Select Board could make an interim appointment to fill the vacancy. And the required 7-day waiting period after nominations are made would expire on December 15th. And January 12th, the newly appointed board member is sworn in. And the new member would participate in 3 Select Board meetings before town meeting as it looks right now, unless we need another special meeting to review things. We had some questions about the process and whether for such a short period it was something that we could just forego. However, the town's charter states that we shall, not may, and so we need to follow this process. There was also a suggestion that possibly a former board member might be willing to who's familiar with all of the process and procedures, might be willing to serve for those 3 meetings, and that's certainly an option that we could entertain if one steps forward. But I would make the recommendation that we follow the process and see who steps forward. I would like to highly encourage everybody to dig into we've got a couple good interested individuals that are stepping forward, and I'm going to offer, once we've authorized this process, I'll offer to meet with them and talk to them about what it means to be on the Select Board if they would like to. But I would encourage us all to try to dig deep and find diversity amongst the candidates so that we can consider a very diverse candidate pool as we look at this and encourage them to run for future long-term position. Okay. Questions, Dan?
Yes, and then in March, it's a normal election process. I think 2 board members are up for a re-election, and then there will be an election for Victor's 1 year left in his term. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is correct. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't cover that, but that's exactly what would be.
Is that a separate pool of candidates? Some people run for the 1 year term and some run for the 3 year term?
Yes. You would have to run specifically for the 1 year term.
But the one we are going to appoint now, the interim one, that's going to be only for 3 months?
It won't even be a full 3 months, couple months.
Okay, not until the next year, the following year.
Right.
Okay.
And that's spelled out in the town charter. And so I hadn't had this happen in a while, or we hadn't, and so Kathleen dug it out and shared it with me. And so there is a process. Certainly, there's very little that got missed in drafting procedures in the charter for the town. Any questions or thoughts on that? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Well, I guess I'll move to authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to advertise for individuals interested in seeking appointment to the Middlebury Select Board until town meeting of March 2021.
Second.
Okay, any comments or questions before we vote?
Brian, it looks like we have a raised hand from Laura of Surmully.
Oh, sure.
Go ahead, Laura.
I just want to say that I appreciate the comments that Nick had of Victor, first of all, and also that I'm excited about the opportunity to expand diversity. So Brian, I'm so glad that you mentioned that. And I also wonder if you could let people know tonight that if they are running for the select board, they don't need to collect signatures as in the past, that they can just submit their name. So they would go to the town clerk to get their paperwork to express, they still need to file that they're interested, but that would be the process.
As always, I can count on you, Laura, to keep us straight on stuff like that. And thank you very much, because I'm not looking out quite that far because we got the budget and so many other things looming in the near term. And so, yeah, thank you very much, Laura. And that is all, it was all accurate. And I think you've just put it out for us all. Thank you. Okay.
Brian, we have another raised hand from Judy, Weicker Groves.
Okay.
Go ahead, Judy.
Good evening, everybody. Did the citizens' comments time already pass?
It did, Judy. Is there something on the agenda that you want to talk about?
No, I just wanted to say thank you to Anne and Melissa and Louise and every member of the town clerk's office for the work they did at the election. And to Lindsay, were you a vote counter, a poll watcher? Somebody, but for your work also, I just want to thank everybody who was involved in that effort. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. And I'm sure that would have come up in the board comments because a number of people on the board I noticed posting. And so, yeah, good comments.
Thanks.
Dan?
Yeah, I know. To follow up on Judy, I know that I signed the check warrants today, and there was many checks with many names of people who participated in that, and it's a very long list.
Okay, so I'm just going to bring us back to our agenda item that we were on, and we have a motion on the floor to authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to advertise for individuals interested in seeking appointment to the Select Board until town meeting in March 2021. Okay, any comments on that? Seeing none, all in favor, thumbs up. Okay, all right, and then as Laura very nicely put it, you will not need to collect signatures, but you will need to say what you're running for, which term, whether it's a 3-year or a 1-year term. Chris, can you get Chief in here with us?
Yes, I will, Brian.
Next is our local emergency management director's pandemic update.
Brian, can I just say one thing quickly? Sorry.
Sure.
I just wanted to put out there that if there is anyone interested in the position for select board and wanted another opinion, you know, from, not that you wouldn't give a great opinion, but from, you know, a different perspective as a female, as a mom, you know, anyone interested in speaking with me, please feel free to reach out. I would be happy to assist and answer any questions.
And I'm going to offer the entire board because I think you would find that anybody on this board will speak with you. It's a very collegial board. We have different backgrounds, different opinions. I'm doing the sales pitch now, but I think you'll find it's a very tight board in that we work to try to do the best for the town. So, Chief, it's yours.
Hi, I want to echo the board's comments on Victor. You know, he was the voice of reason amidst the noise out there, and the true philosopher. He always caused you to think before you acted, and I always appreciated that. Anyway, getting on to COVID stuff, things are not getting better. Things are getting worse. We're good here in Middlebury. We haven't had any new cases with town residents in a while, and we remain stable. And that's a testament to the folks here who are following all the rules, who are masking up in the stores, who are keeping their gatherings small. However, we are surrounded by places that are not doing so well. In fact, the forecast now is going from the single numbers every day of new infections in the state up to 40 to 60 a day in the state. That's a day. When you think about what those numbers will be after a month. The VDH has submitted their vaccination plan to the federal government. That doesn't mean there's a vaccination. They've just got their plan and distribution all set and ready to go whenever that vaccination is. And that'll be for healthcare workers first, and the vulnerable, and some of the others. We're taking a little bit steps back. There's going to be compliance checks that are done starting Monday by state officials. They'll be going in plain clothes to lodgings, to bars, to restaurants, making sure everybody's following the rules. We have not had an issue here with that. I just want to underscore that. We're prepared to do what we need to do to go back where we were back in April and May of doing compliance checks and trying to encourage people to do that because we don't want to get this disease out of control. I'm increasing the bulletins that go out every day because there's new news every day for people to be aware of, just to try to keep people in touch as what's going on. Really just encouraging them that things are not good right now. This was a predicted growth of the disease in the fall. It's here, it is growing, and we all have to remain careful with that. As you know, or you probably heard on the news, there's no more cross-state travel map. Any non-essential travel outside of Vermont, you've got to quarantine for 14 days before you come back. Anybody coming in from anywhere out of Vermont, whether it's right across the river or right across the lake or from southern New England or wherever, you've got to quarantine for 14 days before you can come into the state. So you got to be able to certify that. How that's going to shake out for some of the holiday issues, for some of the ski areas, some of the lodging that goes on, probably not all that well. So we need to keep an eye on the economic impact of that too. So this is farther reaching than just trying to stop the disease. And I'll end my report there, but hopefully we can stem this before it gets out of control.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. Pretty depressing to watch the news, huh?
Yeah, it is. It's a little frustrating at the same time because most of these outbreaks we're having are just people that aren't following the rules, coming in from out of state. It's all community transmission. Avoidable.
Yeah. Any questions of Chief? Okay. I did notice your the cross-state, what is that? Can they do a 7 days, Chief, and then get a test? Or,
Yeah. Yes, that's part of it. They can do 7-day quarantine with a test on day 7.
Okay.
And it's got to be a negative test.
Yeah, 'cause I'm just doing a video to my whole team as well to try to make sure everybody's on the same page. But I think we all need to double down, don't we?
Yes.
Okay, if there's no questions of Chief, then Chris, if you could invite Lisa Ryan in. And Chief, I assume you're going to stay in here with us?
Yes.
Yeah, please. You there, Lisa?
I'm here. I have to unmute myself.
There we go.
Good evening. How are you?
Hi,
Good.
Lisa.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Nice to see everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. I think Tabitha is going to try and join us. However, she also has an executive committee meeting for the Rutland area branch of the NAACP, but I was able to talk to her earlier this evening to share some of her remarks about what's been going on in the process that we've had. I also was able to speak with Kathleen and Chief yesterday for about 25 minutes to just determine kind of where we're going and what the needs are and what the needs of the board. And also Chief and Kathleen have both sent me lots of documents and materials on some of the work that's been done, some of the stuff Ideal presented. I also recognize that Chief sent you all the consensus agreements that came out of the restorative process that we did back in September, I believe. It seems so far ago, but I guess it's not that far. Time travels fast. So I'll just introduce myself and then I'll kind of just dig into what we're thinking about as far as engagement. And then I'd be happy to take any questions from any of you. So my name's Lisa Ryan. I grew up in Rutland, so I'm in Rutland City. My husband and I bought a house here about 2.5 years ago, but I grew up here, was raised here. I left for college. I went to Temple in Philadelphia, and then I came back and didn't fully expect to be kind of living my life here, but Rutland and Vermont is my home, and especially in times like these, it's really highlighted and appreciated Vermont and all that it has to offer, especially during this pandemic. So I work at the Rutland County Community Justice Center and at Brock Community Action. I'm sure most of you are at least familiar with the Restorative Justice Center in Addison County, who are counterparts of ours, and we work very closely with them as well as the other about 18 community justice centers throughout the state. So I've been in my role as the director there for probably about 3.5 years, working mostly with folks who are coming out of incarceration, so offenders, and utilizing restorative justice practices and approaches in order to help them reintegrate back in the community. So that means engaging with police, with the courts, probation and parole, all of those community partners that we have in order to help folks coming out be successful and not reoffend. We also have victim services that we do at Brock Community Action under this program. And so that's somebody that works exclusively with victims of crime. And for right now, mostly those victims of property crimes where there's no identifiable perpetrator. So oftentimes we see a lot of property crimes happening with no arrests made, and understanding that, there's been harm, and how can we, help make reparations towards that harm, even though there's been no arrest. We certainly work closely with our state's attorney's office, who has the victim advocates, but we really let them deal with the domestic and sexual violence and, cooperate any way we can. But I just wanted to give you an overview of kind of where I'm coming from, the work I'm coming from. My background is in psychology and Spanish, as well as mediation and conflict studies. So do some mediations on the side, would like to do more, but trying to get back into that. I certainly don't want to speak for Tabitha, but I did again speak with her before this, and I think in talk, you're all familiar with the issue in the incident that happened over the late summer with the individual that was targeted at a park in Middlebury. So Tabitha works with a lot of police departments throughout the state and contracts with a lot of them. And we work well together. We work with each other because I was her first vice president of the NAACP when it was first established in 2016 in the Rutland area. So we've been working together and getting to know each other, and have done trainings and conferences with each other since probably 2016. But she reached out to me after she spoke with, I believe, Chief Hanley about the issue that had occurred with the individual in the park, and asked me if I would be able, with, again, using restorative justice, we're not looking at punitive, we're looking at restorative and transformative ways to heal and to move on and to make sure every voice is heard, and to have no more victims. So Tabitha reached out to me around having a process that would involve, ideally, all participants, all parties, in what happened to the individual that we're speaking of. So I met and had conversations with Chief Hanley, and at the time we were very lucky to be able to do things in person, and so we had what we call, and what I use in my work every day really, is a restorative circle, which is where we bring all parties affected. So includes the victim or harm party or impacted party, the people who caused the harm. So in this case, it would have been the officers in the police department. And also, ideally, again, we'd bring in the people who directly caused the harm, which were the folks who had called the police. But unfortunately, we weren't able to get them to participate, which would have been really great. But I think for various reasons and age and things like that, their parents weren't comfortable maybe having them participate, which we totally respect. However, we had a restorative circle, and we talked about really what happened, who was affected, who was harmed, what needs to be done to repair that harm, and really have a conversation that is equitable and that promotes equality in the room. So, we structure it as we actually set up in a circle. We're able to see each other. We're able to see each other's faces and be on the same level while engaging in conversations about how people were affected. I'm not sure how much you know about the outcome of the restorative circle and what Chief has maybe shared with you or hasn't, but for me, and I think, I don't want to speak on behalf of the participants, but certainly I think an overall general view is that it was very positive. We were able to speak honestly and directly with folks and hear how positions and interests come into play, and how protocols come into play, and how people's feelings, were really honored, and people really felt heard. I felt very good about it afterwards, and I'm also, coming in as a neutral party and facilitating this, the discussion and this restorative circle. So that, again, we had, it was about 3 hours, I think, Chief, maybe around 3 hours. We were lucky enough to use, I believe, the town hall, which is beautiful, by the way. I forgot to mention, I'm also on the Rutland City Board of Aldermen and have been since 2017. But coming to your building, and it was beautiful. It was a great space, and we really wanted to find a neutral setting. I think initially we were thinking about the police department, but how that could be triggering for folks, especially for the individual who was involved in the incident. So as far as moving forward, again, we established collaboratively the consensus agreements, and in speaking with Tabitha tonight, we really thought, and speaking with Chief and Kathleen yesterday, as far as what we can offer all of you folks, understanding that you want to dive deeper and you want to understand and want to be able to be equitable in making decisions, and also just like learning about, diversity, equity, inclusion, how that affects the community and affects also the people who are in the community and the roles that each of you play. So I think what Tabitha and I had at least established, and I'll check in with all of you, and of course I'll take questions after, is that we've received some of the documents that Kathleen and Chief had sent us. We also are aware of the work that you've done in the presentation that Ideal put on for you all, and how can we complement that work, and how can we dive deeper into that work. So along with the consensus agreements that we had made up collaboratively and collectively, coupled with the kind of wishes that all of you have had, and I received that from Kathleen, which was very helpful in structuring what you'd like to know about, what you'd like to learn, how you can approach this. We ideally would like to put those things together, kind of come up with a scope of services, and then present some kind of proposal or contract with all of you to be able to meet those needs. I will say in doing this consultation work that Tabitha and I have done together, we understand that, you may want to reach out to other folks to provide these services and regarding compensation and things like that. But I think that we've really made some groundbreaking here in the work that we've done with Chief and the officers and the individual from the community. I think that we've really started to do some of that work, and the consensus agreements, again, coming out of that restorative circle process, and how can we couple those consensus agreements with what you all have brought to the table and what your wishes are and expectations, and again, provide a scope of service and ideally a contract moving forward. So I think that that's where we are. We want to continue engaging. We love doing this work. And mostly we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of you and the community, so that, as a state, as a town, as a city, we're all moving forward and understanding the important parts that play into the lives of people who might look differently than us, or have different lived experiences. And I know I just kind of blabbed on a lot, so if there's any questions, I'm just here to give a basic overview and hope to continue this conversation and meet with you folks offline. Chief, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we're probably all thinking the same thing. We want everybody in this town, regardless of their background, to have confidence in the town government, to have confidence in all the services, whether it's police or public works, not to be fearful, and understand that we're all working for the same end, that we want a just and fair system of government in this town in all across the spectrum. And I think that's where we want to get. We're stumbling around a little bit, kind of bumping in the dark, and but I think, and I'll speak for the board as well as myself, we're all committed to moving forward. And that's where we want to be, but it's nice to have somebody kind of steer the ship for us and guide us, somebody that's been there, because we haven't. And that's what I think we're all looking for.
That's great, thank you.
Dan?
Yeah, Lisa, I just thought this was thank you for being here, and thank you for what you've had to say. But this was an incredibly interesting process, and I know our chief is the kind of guy that would embrace something like this and move forward with it. And so I appreciate it. I appreciate the restorative dialogue. And as the chief has said, this is a real learning process for us. We need more information and more help. And thank you for yours.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's so nice and refreshing when you have folks willing to engage in this, right? Like that's like the first step, is just like, yes, I want to learn, I want to be educated on certain things. And I don't always see that in the different realms and circles of work that I do. And so it's great that I think most of you are on the same page.
I can't speak for everybody, but I think that we're all exactly on the same page, and I think we live in a community that is very willing to move forward also.
Nick,
Yeah, Lisa, thank you as well. You know, I look at what Ideal presented, and it was a good historical narrative of, you know, how we ended up where we are. But I find myself personally, and I've had the good fortune in just my professional work to work at places like Mary McLeod Bethune Council House and Maggie Walker National Historic Site, and these were people that took that historical narrative and moved it forward to, and so what I find myself deeply looking for is what's next. You know, what do we do to solve this? Yeah, we can't change what happened in the historical narrative. You know, it happened before us, and it's done. But now we need to constantly remind ourselves how to avoid this going forward. And I think in some cases we may, and you know, we don't want to believe we have biases, but there's probably some intrinsic bias that each of us holds, and so to be able to recognize that, so it is, it doesn't impact our decision-making process. So again, just in summary, and I think that's a lot of what we're all looking for in the board is, what do we do next? And you know, the narrative was fascinating, but now we need to move on. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chief.
Yeah, just the experience we have with Lisa and Tabitha when we all got together. I think the one thing, in spite of COVID, I insisted on that we meet in person, that we meet without masks, so that we kind of bear ourselves to each other. We had a number of police officers in the room. We had Bash, the fellow from the park. Lisa was there. Tabitha, the caregiver for, or the counselor for the woman that was involved, the disabled woman. And this was a very positive experience for all involved. I mean, everybody came away feeling, not feeling good about what happened, but at least knowing that we've dealt with it face to face. We've all put everything out on the table, and we're able to walk away with a lot of respect for each other when we did that. And Lisa was able to lead us through that. And I can imagine that must have been awkward for some of the folks at first. And I think some of the groundbreaking Lisa was doing was kind of goofy, but it kind of got everybody laughing and kind of broke the ice. And she was very, very good at leading us through that process. That has transcended itself through the ranks here at the PD, even those that weren't involved. And it's allowed us to have a lot of internal discussions on this issue. So I think we're moving along, and we're encouraged, and we want to keep going. And hopefully we could do it in conjunction with the town rather than going off on our own.
Mhm.
I think we're all in this together, and I think we need to be together on this. And so I hate to have disparate efforts going on, but I think we can all work together on this.
Okay, so I just wrote down, Lisa will probably start off, it'll be a little goofy, but just stay with her. Is that a fair way to look at this? Is it acceptable, Lisa, to do? You wouldn't feel offended if we would sit there and roll our eyes a little bit? And then,
No, go right ahead.
Okay.
I respect Chief. So you know what? A little goofiness and awkwardness is what brought us together, I think.
we can-
Those are called icebreakers.
Icebreakers. Well, thank you for that one.
And thank
We'll do
you
our
for
part to
your
break it.
I think we're lucky to have the chief among us, and we are thankful that Lisa and Tabitha, you are joining this group to take the next step. I really want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just want to, if I could say something, is that okay? Kind of piggybacking on what Chief said, is that you don't see this happen a lot where the end result is not punitive, right? It's not a lawsuit, or it's not a, file with the Human Rights Commission. Like we're literally able to sit with police officers and community members and have an honest and deep conversation about how we felt, how to be vulnerable. I mean, you just don't see it often, especially with today's climate and how law enforcement has been in the spotlight. And I'm so really grateful for Chief to just be willing to like go outside of the norm and try to really get these transformative and restorative practices into how we deal with conflict and how we deal when have different views. I mean, I was totally impressed with the law enforcement in the room and you know how honest they were and how respectful they were. And again, they're humans. We're all people. We all make mistakes, but at the end of the day, they have a job to do. And that may or may not affect how folks react. And that was, you know, a lot of the case of what happened this summer. And just to be able to be in that space and really being in that space physically and having those masks off and socially distant, of course, was just super helpful to really just be able to read, you know, the stories and really hear the words that came out of folks' mouth. So I was just so appreciative of that.
One of the experiences that we came away with was that when this incident first happened, the officers really couldn't understand, where's the angst? We got sent to a call. We're just doing our job. We didn't use any force. We didn't do any of that. We don't understand it. Well, now they understand it because they're able to look through Bash's eyes, which they couldn't do before, and they do now. It gives them more of a sense of when we engage somebody, we're now looking back at us through their eyes. So we understand really what's going on with them. And that was one of the big takeaways from this this meeting we had.
Yeah, and I think even for Bash, and I don't want to speak for him, but certainly we've had many conversations about this, understanding protocol and procedure of law enforcement and how to react with calls that you get and what you're trained to do as law enforcement and how that came into play. Again, we didn't have all parties present, but we had, you know, 90%, which was good enough, I think.
I like the process. It sounds like you've done some real meaningful work with our police department. So I'm anxious to hear what I hear you saying is you're going to put a proposal together for engaging the select board through the process and getting that up to Kathleen for us to look at.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's correct. I again, it was really helpful to get kind of everybody's, you know, take on where they want to go and where they want to be and learning about, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion, all the things that we're talking about, and how can we couple that with the overall consensus agreements that we established from the restorative circle process and the dialogue. So that we're meeting the needs of the community, of all of you, and, you know, moving forward. So ideally, it'll look like, I think, a set of trainings and workshops. And again, you all will see it and decide if the scope of service is what you're looking for and where it might need to be tweaked. But I would say, again, in talking to Tabitha tonight, the next couple weeks, we would have that to Kathleen and Chief to share with you all.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been great. Thank you.
Nice to see you again, Lisa.
Okay. Thank you,
Thanks,
folks.
Lisa.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Well, Chief, thanks. Sounds like a very interesting process that you've gone through, and might be a good basis for us to start our work.
Good. It's long overdue, and we're encouraged.
Okay. All right, then I'm going to ask Chris to get Jen Murray on with us. I'm sure she's out there somewhere. Chris?
As soon as I find her in the list. Yep, there she is.
Jen, I knew you wouldn't miss your crowning opportunity here, so I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor immediately. Go ahead.
So yeah, yesterday, last meeting, we got substantially through the whole plan. There was only one section that we didn't discuss, and that was the EDI analysis. But did anybody have any questions that they came up with since last meeting? Maybe we'll start there. Or comments. Okay.
I did appreciate, I thought Victoria did a nice job of sending in a lot of the comments that had been out there, and so that, you know, they were vocalized and discussed, so.
Yeah, Victoria is one of those rock stars that attended all of our meetings, so we were really lucky to have people like that really participating and caring.
Right.
So I'm just going to share my screen one more time. We'll finish up that last section quick. Here. Actually, I'm going to be on page. Here we go. So, yeah, so as part of this, you know, we had all these different focus groups, and one focus group we met with were a few of the NextBridge partners and John Dale, and we talked through the NextBridge project, lessons learned, and, you know, what could have been easier for them, et cetera. And what I wanted the consultant to cast in stone here in the plan for you to be able to refer to in the future is these 3 different redevelopment scenarios. We kind of went through and lightly explored 4 different scenarios for how that site could be built out. So scenario 1 is like your no build option. It's the site remains as surface parking. So, you know, the pros are that you don't have to spend money on development costs and maintenance and operation, but the cons is that the site's probably not, you know, being used for its highest and best use at this time. Scenario 2 is multiple small buildings. And so you saw that in the illustrative master plan in that other section, the one that showed all the little small buildings. So the pro for that one is that people really liked that in the meeting. They liked the massing being broken up into all those small buildings. But the cons is that it might be really unrealistic because all the cost of the site work and the development costs that you put in, they may outweigh what you can actually generate in revenue at the end, having all those small buildings. Scenario 3 is just taking a few of those small buildings and consolidating them. So you've got 2 or 3 larger 4 or 5 story buildings. And just like the preliminary work they did indicates that, once again, you might not have revenue generated that would cover those site development costs unless the municipal subsidizes the project. And then scenario 4, which you see here to the right, is really, you know, what we saw with NextBridge, the 1 or 2 larger 6 or 7 story buildings. And it's clear that maybe perhaps one of the reasons they showed us this scenario is because it's probably the most realistic from a development feasibility perspective. It's got enough leasable space there that they can like defray the development cost. But the con, of course, is that larger building massing and the height might exceed the community's comfort level in terms of aesthetics. So these are kind of 4 scenarios to ponder in the future. I wanted to share them with you and talk through them because it's clear that in order to make something happen there, you know, there's going to have to be a contribution from the municipality that's more than just the land. We would have to contribute to the development costs as well. So maybe one potential reason for putting it on the back burner for a bit. We do have some next steps here because, you know, of course, I was pressing the consultant, if we do want to proceed, what would those next steps look like? And so what they recommend is that for each of those 4 development scenarios we saw, that a fiscal analysis is done that looks at the cost side from the developer's perspective, and then looks at the aesthetic side from the community perspective. What does the community really want out of this as well? And just a suitability assessment. And then you would be able to recommend a preferred scenario, one of those 4 scenarios. You'd be able to put together a development strategy and an implementation plan that we can follow as the town so that we know what the steps are from our perspective. And then as extras, they could help us put together an RFP at that point or reach out to a developer. So that's probably what that site looks like. It confirmed our suspicions that was a very complex site to try to develop on, and a public-private partnership is a complex situation too. There are consultants that specialize in only that. So yeah, I think we learned a lot, and it was a really good talk with the NextBridge partners, and they were really honest with us, and that was super helpful. at the end, we've got this bulleted list of site design principles, and that'll serve us well in the future if we decide to pursue something there. These design principles are things that we would want to be requiring from a developer in a design. And having this laid out in advance in a plan is much easier on them than putting them through a committee with a bunch of rigorous, revisions and revisions and revisions that cost them money before they even get into the actual permitting review process. So I like to think that we've made a good investment here in, having some core principles that we would want in a development agreement down the road if we pursued something there. So that's kind of the quick version of that. And I think we should put that section at the end because that's almost like a next steps type thing. So that was what I didn't have time to say to you at the last meeting. Any questions or thoughts on that?
Nick's hand is up. Go ahead, Nick.
We are, okay. Thanks, Jen. I mean, this was a good conclusion to what you presented last time. I just want to add one thought there is not if we develop that area, but when. As I think we probably all largely agree that that site is just too valuable to be a parking lot. I mean, there's so much we can do down there to enhance the vitality of the town center. And the potential is just huge down there. It's going to be a big part of a vital town core. And traveling around through the years, I've seen similar projects of different massings, and they can work really, really well. I've seen some that don't too, but they largely do achieve the objective. I mean, Saratoga Springs is a classic case, and while it's a bigger city, they've done so many really nice infill projects down there that work. So it really just comes down to now, as we approve this master plan, which once again, you deserve a lot of credit for guiding this on through, but now we have to really make it happen. Our town's future is very dependent on a lot of this. So look forward moving forward and getting some of these beta projects, and hopefully that one is going to be near the front end. So thanks again.
Yeah, I don't want to end on that note of this EDI site to make it seem like it's the grand finale or like the reason for having done this plan. There are over 130 recommendations in this plan, most of which don't have to do anything with the EDI site at all. So please let's not lose track of those as well.
Oh, we don't plan to. It's
okay,
there can be a lot of playgrounds happening. There's a lot of really good developers out there. There's a lot of really good architects out there. And no, it is not a one shot. It's everything, and coming together for now and for the future.
Any questions or comments? Yes, Heather.
First, I just want to say great job, Jen and the Planning Commission. I am really impressed with the final product. So thank you. And I would just make a quick comment that I was really, really interested in some of the water flow. Gosh, I'm going to draw a blank on the right terminology. I'm sorry. Clean water stuff, green spaces and water filtering. I really see us maybe being able to start on some of those projects and try to mix some of those kind of ideas in with other infrastructure projects that we have going on. And I know we've talked about some of them in the past, and of course, money is always an object that stands in the way. But anyway, I'm looking forward to maybe trying to implement, especially down in, kind of the Frog Hollow way, those stairs that go down. And, I'm just been really impressed this summer with all of the stuff that the Stone Mill has been doing and the way they're getting traffic down into that, foot traffic down into that area, and just been down there some myself this summer and just seeing what the possibilities in that plan. And having been down there. I think those are some of the things that have been pretty exciting to me. So thank you. I want to say good job and keep up the good work. And did you get those Martians to get their ship out of your porch?
Finally, they took off again. Yeah.
Lindsay, you had some comments?
Yeah, no, I kind of just wanted to echo what everybody's saying in terms of how impressed I am with I Have Been project. It's actually one of the few things I've been able to see from start to finish as a newer board member. So this has absolutely exceeded my expectations for what we would have. And I wanted to say that I'm really excited that there are, just a variety of projects. It's obviously aspirational and thinking big, but as Heather was saying with like the water, the water filtration pieces, like I'm excited for the smaller things that can be tacked in to other projects. And I think it gives us a real, just a framework for thinking about the town. In a way that we haven't, things often sometimes feel disjointed when you're working on projects. It feels like, things are compartmentalized. And I love that this gives us sort of a framework and a vision for how to tie all those pieces together. So again, I'm incredibly impressed with this job. It's a job well done. And I just want to thank everybody who's working on this, including citizens who gave their opinion. So that was it.
Farhad.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. Job well done, Jen. It was a great presentation. There's not much I can add. Nick had summarized everything I wanted to say earlier. I just had a quick question. In the beginning of the presentation, you had mentioned there's only 6% population lives in downtown. How does it compare to the other downtowns, or does it make a difference how many people live downtown? To the vitality of downtown?
That's an interesting question. I should see if there's any data to compare that to other downtowns, especially one that's similar to ours. Of course, the answer to would it have an effect is, if people are living downtown, then there's a nightlife in downtown, people are on the street and walking around, and I think that's the same for offices too. Initially, I was wondering if offices were a weird use in downtown, but no, that gets people out and eating lunch in downtown and gives you that vitality you're looking for.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nick?
Yeah, just one thing to sort of finish off my thoughts on this, and what I fully expect in this plan. I read it a seventh time, and Jen since left, and looked at it again. And I can think of some of the places I've been to, and the stone mill being an example when Heather mentioned that. That's one of those fun anchor projects. And I think what we're going to see is as we start getting some of these first anchor projects implemented, the town takes on, and we do it well, which I know we will, the town takes on this reputation of being a fun vibe, a place where you want to be. And it tends to draw in the best of those who can create the good. And so I think it's going to be a real exponential growth. I think we're going to see it'll start off a little slow for the first year or two, but then watch out. And we're going to see a lot of these other 100-some projects start to come about, I think at a pretty good pace. And so the next decade in this town has potential to be really, really a fascinating place. And again, thanks for the work. You opened my eyes to the benefit of the master plan, and from what I see, it is what we want. So good work.
Dan?
Yeah, thanks, Jen. It's really a fun document. It's just fun to read. It's fun to see. It's fun to dream, and it's very interesting. As a follow-on, we don't need to do it tonight. I'm looking very much forward to learning what we do with the master plan and what we do as a community and how we use this plan and how we go forward, because I don't know.
So before we go to motion. I just had a couple of things I'd like to say, Jen. You worked hard on us for 3 years or so to get us convinced that we needed a master plan. And then we had to fund it. And so anyways, I'm glad we funded it. You found a way to fund it. And I think we're all very pleased with the deliverable. And out of it, for me personally, I think part of the answer to Dan's question is it gives us some vision of what we can be if we decide we want to be. And then we have to begin to action those items that take us in that direction. And that's what came out of also the economic development is if, without a vision, we're not going to go anywhere. And I think we're all seeing that status quo is just not working in the current environment. And so we need to find the pieces of this that we endorse the most and really work hard to try to implement some actions that'll make this stuff come to fruition, or it's just a piece of paper on the shelf. And so I would encourage us all to kind of talk to others and start to get some excitement around the vision that we're creating of how do we restore vitality to the downtown, or as bare minimum, not let it slide. And I would say some restoration is in order. Everybody recognizes empty storefronts. But it's all part of the vision. It's all part of the process, and it's part of what this plan is supposed to. The deliverable for this plan. It wasn't just to create something to set on the shelf. So we all need to work hard with Jen, and try to make the plan something that we can use for some action, because we've got to find a way to restore the lifeblood to the downtown. And some of these things, like the infill of housing, solves a number of issues. And it was very creative and things that I think many of us wouldn't have thought about had we not gone through this process. So it was very valuable. And I do want to thank all the townspeople that came out and supported the process and provided input. And the last comment, as you said, it's aspirational, and there have been some comments of things, and one specifically, the farmers market seems to be very happy where they're at, and I don't think it keeps us from aspiring to want to have them in the downtown. We recognize that they have free will as well, and they can and will do what is best for them. But we're trying to create that vibrant downtown that makes people and activities want to be a part of it and come to the downtown. So thank you.
That reminds me of something that's important about the plan too, is that, downtown in particular can be a very chaotic place sometimes that's full of really great ideas, but everyone is kind of working in their own separate enclaves, and sometimes the ideas butt up against each other. So when people have ideas, like the farmers market wanting to renew a lease or something, or BMP, you'll be hearing from BMP, and Karen and I have already talked a few times about things that she has in mind and how that fits with the ideas in the master plan. Hopefully this master plan kind of brings us all together so that we're referring to that document when a cool idea comes up in downtown, so that we're all kind of moving in the same direction, which is a lot of what you said too, Brian. Well, thank you for caring enough to support this plan and help us make a plan of action. You guys are great.
Pleasure of the board.
Well, I'd be honored actually to move to adopt the Town of Middlebury Downtown Master Plan.
Second.
Any final comments or questions? Hearing none, I think it's time to vote. All those in favor of approving the downtown master plan? We had to have 7 votes.
See, Jen, we're not always difficult to work with.
Thank you to Victor as well for being supportive of this idea.
He would have voted yes.
He would have.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Chris, can you get Karen and Amy on, please?
Sure can.
Hey, Karen.
How's it going, you guys?
Good.
Hi.
Nice to see you in this format at any rate.
Amy, you with us? She's still connected.
Karen, would you like me to do share screen or would you like us to give it to you?
If you can do it, that would be great. And I'll
Okay.
just sort of let you know when I need to click through.
Okay.
Did you come in with us, Amy? Are you prepared to move forward, Karen? Or?
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, why don't we just let you move forward while Amy's connected?
Sounds good. All right. So we are here tonight to request a funding increase for next year. Fully aware that timing is really less than optimal on this for many reasons, but as a board, we had a really in-depth conversation specifically about this timing. And the fact is that we really feel like we have work to do, frankly. We have a lot of work to do, and there are a lot of needs to meet. And so we are requesting an increase of $5,000 for the next fiscal year. This does represent the first increase request that the BMP has ever presented to the Select Board since the beginning of this funding structure. So it would be an increase from 25,000 to 30,000. Kathleen, you want to keep it going? So as stewards of the town funds, obviously you would like to know what you get as a return on that investment. And so this is just frankly a small amount, but this is a little peek into the work that the BMP does on a pretty consistent basis. So you'll see, I'm not going to run through everything. I'm assuming you guys have had a chance to look at all of this. But of course, events and promotions are a big part of what we do. We also serve as a local leader in the community. I'll refer you back to the Neighbors Together work that the BMP led in the last several years. We serve as a business liaison and a resource for a number of entities, including the state of Vermont, and that has never been more so than this past year. In addition, we work closely with the town on that, Middlebury College, regional organizations. I had federal in here. We had a couple interviews with FEMA this year as part of the COVID relief stuff. Of course, we promote Middlebury through the Experience Middlebury website, social media channels, and the now ongoing Neighbors Together marketing efforts to a broader visitor-based audience, which you'll hear more about when I come back next week for a Neighbors Together update. We do business advocacy and support, including creating business-to-business connections, distributing information and resources directly to the businesses that's relevant to them. In some cases, this year in particular, it was a matter of receiving information and then actually just making personal phone calls to make sure individual businesses had also received that information, or did they know how to follow up on this? This was something that was going to be really good for that particular business. And so let me help you with that process. We did a lot of business roundtables this year, which is something that will continue around different things that come up. It's really been invaluable to lead that process, more so for the fact that they can talk to one another and that we're sort of the connector of that. But that's been actually some really positive, wonderful collaboration has come out of those roundtables that we've hosted. And then I'm not sure if you're aware, but often the BMP even provides direct assistance to individual businesses with things like marketing support, promoting employment opportunities that they have, things like that. So when we're asked, we really try to be very accessible to any business and responsive to what they need. We work on economic development activities through the Middlebury Money Program Administration and of course through Bundle. And then the one that I want to focus on right now is the community building that we do. And so much of what the BMP does, I think, falls into this bucket. Really, frankly, everything that we do kind of can come back to this, which is really just facilitating the relationships and creating opportunities for community engagement and investment. I feel very strongly that apathy is what kills a town and what kills a community. And so the more engaged and invested a community member feels to that space, to each other, to the businesses, to the town, that's when you see towns thrive. So everything that we do, all of the rest of that list really boils down to how do we continue to build community through those efforts. So one thing that I want to talk about, sorry, my blanket, it is 8 o'clock. One thing that I want to talk about is the block party is an example of one of these events. You know, on its surface, the block party is a really fun community event. People come, they have a good time, they connect with one another, we're supporting businesses, and if that was all there was to it, that's still great. But I wanted to just run through like what happens on the back end that people don't really see, and all of these sort of touch points that happen to create an event like this and why these things are so vital to a healthy community. So behind the scenes of the block party, that last year, we have a great relationship with an organization called Come Alive Outside, and through that relationship asked them to procure sod, and then asked the crew that from a business called Carpenter and Costin to lay it down for us. And again, that was through the relationship that we had developed with that business. We asked Middlebury College to donate hot dogs, which we then sold for $1 each to donate to the fire department. DPW swept the street, and then the fire department washed it down post-event. The ACDC and chamber and members of their individual families came and served up popcorn and snow cones. We had hundreds of volunteers who contributed time to this event in really every way, between postering and setup and takedown and serving cotton candy. And one thing that I want to note for this particular event, the ages of the volunteers ranged from 4 to over 80. The varsity and JV boys soccer team from the high school came and rolled up the sod when the event was over, which was then taken to the local Habitat for Humanity house to be put down. And then every volunteer, every business that was impacted, every attendee, every vendor, every organization or town department, that was all really important to making this successful. But even more importantly, each one of those individuals made an investment of time and energy into our community through this event, which strengthens their relationship with the town, the businesses, and each other. So, you know, this is why this really, I think, in my mind, sums up exactly why I believe the BMP is so important to this town, because it was a really fun party, but it created so many more opportunities for engagement than just that one thing. So we also have some statistics and data to share with you. So we keep track as part of our designated downtown status. We have to keep track of certain things to report back to the state. And so for the downtown in 2019, we had, and this is specific to the downtown, we had over 4,200 hours donated by over 750 volunteers in just a year. And coming back to this idea that volunteering in your community fosters those feelings of connection and belonging, and engagement is really critical to an overall health and vitality of a community.
Can I pipe in for a second? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure I was connected in case I decide to pipe in again. Okay.
Did you have something to say, Amy, or is that it?
No, I just wanted to make sure I was connected before I had something to say.
Gotcha. And so likewise, back to this idea of bringing people together that gives them the opportunity to form those connections and creating a stronger community. We had over 8,000 people attend BMP events last year, which is enormous and really awesome. 2019 Middlebury money statistics, and I'll soon have the 2020, but I chose to use 2019 for the reason that we had the complete year to look at. We had $28,080 redeemed in 2019 and just over $39,000 purchased in 2019. And as you guys know, it is a currency that is spent within Middlebury, accepted now at almost 100% of our businesses. And we're able to track that on a monthly basis with the National Bank of Middlebury. So we know where it's being accepted in the last 2 years in particularly. The spread of where that is being redeemed has grown way beyond the downtown. So the impact of this program is showing an investment well outside of our downtown as well. And then, of course, through various initiatives like the Midnight Stroll and the Block Party in particular, and Small Business Saturday, things that we have actual receipts to show for, then we know that over $75,000 has been invested locally through BNP-led initiatives. And again, that's just what we know. So to sort of go beyond that, you know, it's likely a lot more. I put this slide in because I often describe the BNP as sort of a hub in the community. It's, I come back to a meeting that we had a few years ago with various nonprofit organizations, and as we sat in this room with all of these people, it really was striking how many of them I had relationships with, but how many of them did not have relationships with each other. And I realized at the time how central this organization is in the community. And I just wanted to show you kind of, this is really consistently for me, this isn't one-off stuff. This is pretty consistently the organizations that I have a pretty close relationship with on a very regular basis. I don't need to go through it. You guys recognize all of these things. You want to move on, Kathleen? So I want to give you guys an idea of our goal here is $100,000 to be able to do the things that we feel that we need to do. That represents staff salary without benefits, programming and events, marketing, and a little tiny bit of overhead and miscellaneous costs of just having an organization. And I'll just throw in here, we keep our overhead very low at the BNP. I work from home anyway, use my own phone. You know, we have very little by way of overhead. And then in terms of the additional funding that we are planning to help us meet those goals, fundraising events, which, you know, have been a little bit stymied here in the last several months, a local appeal letter, support from surrounding towns. One thing I want to note, you know, we have been talking about, Amy can go into detail here, but we've been talking about for a while now what it means to be an organization that's supporting Middlebury businesses to the surrounding communities. And one of the things that I noticed recently was another town's fundraising event for something very well known. And the prize list was all Middlebury business donations. And so I think that the case can really be made for a number of our surrounding towns that having a strong and thriving Shire town really benefits everyone. We'd be looking for additional business investment, event sponsorships, Middlebury College investment, and continued support from the Downtown Improvement District.
Do you want me to chime in, Karen, on
the
funding from surrounding towns? Our plan, our thought is similar to some of the other social services that ask for minimal funding from surrounding towns. They all have slightly different protocol as far as getting on their ballots in the springtime, but I've collected information from, we've just decided to focus on the towns that feed into the Middlebury High School District. So the Middlebury and then the 6 other towns, to ask them for a nominal amount of money to support our organization, knowing full well that the residents of their town, of their respective towns, are benefiting from either events that the BNP puts on or the collaboration we have with some of the businesses here to keep them afloat and thriving.
And then last slide that we have here is, we just wanted to share with you our goals that are both long-term and short-term goals, including planning and hosting events that create vitality in the downtown and beyond. And one thing I'll just throw in here as a good place is that the BMP is continually looking for ways to adapt. That is a message that I shared with businesses over and over again since March, is really how to keep doing things even when it looks different. And I'll just share that a couple weeks ago we did a Halloween event, which traditionally is on the green and includes, it's spectacular, includes kids trick-or-treating down Main Street. And pretty, early on, we realized that that wasn't going to be something that we could feel safe doing. And so we created a drive-through trick-or-treating event, and it ended up being 20 spots with different volunteers from organizations and businesses around Middlebury. We ended up giving away 26,000 pieces of candy. There were kids from all over, not just Middlebury. And by our best estimate is around 650 kids came through and got candy. So, it's just, we are an organization that can be nimble in that way. And we are always looking for how to sort of practice what we preach. If we're asking businesses to be creative and try to adapt to challenges, then we feel like we need to do the same and not just cancel when things are a little bit trickier to do. We want to, of course, continue building and maintaining the relationships within and outside of the community to the benefit of Middlebury, continue to support and advocate for businesses, and continue to work the work that we're doing to promote Middlebury to a larger audience when it's the safest to do that. One thing that is a defined goal for us is that we really want to find the opportunities to build a stronger relationship between Middlebury College students and the community. This is work that has already begun, and I'm feeling really energized around this right now. I think we have some really great partners in this at the college, as well as within the BMP and the businesses. And I see this being really successful in the next year or two, that we're going to start to see a much stronger link. And I'm really excited about the work that's happening with that. We will, of course, continue to support efforts to revitalize downtown Middlebury, and that's something that we're really going to be focusing on as we shift our attention now, moving away from the downtown project to what comes next. What does our town look like post project? As Jen mentioned just a few minutes ago, we've had lots of conversations already, and the downtown master plan is something that I'm very supportive of and want to work within. So excited to see where those partnerships go as well. We want to help provide startup support to new businesses and growth support to existing businesses. And that's something I've had a few conversations with folks that are interested in coming into the downtown, into empty storefronts, and looking for, I've connected them to different resources and offered my advice and some opportunities for collaboration. So that's something that I'm excited to get going on as well. And then, of course, continuing to strengthen the relationships between other town organizations and departments in the BMP. So these are our somewhat lofty, but I think realistic goals. So I would love to, yeah, does somebody have a question? I'd love to take questions and have a conversation with you guys.
Nick. Nick, you're on mute.
Yeah, I am. No, I want to make sure I'm on the album. Karen and Amy, not long ago, we had the conversation with three of us, and Fahad was there. And one of the things that came up is when you were describing how you reacted to the COVID issue and the support and the efforts you've been giving during that. And I was very intrigued by that. In fact, I had no idea you did that. And how much was involved in that, and probably how much of a difference you made to some of the businesses down there. And then also how you can help in the COVID recovery mode that we're going to be hopefully entering very soon. So could you sort of give like a brief summary of some of the stuff that you had been doing during the COVID? Because I thought that was very interesting and very helpful to get an appreciation for what you do.
Yeah. So right off the bat, the state, through the Agency of Commerce, the state sort of rallied all of the downtown organizations together. And so we started a weekly phone call of all of the downtown partnerships in the state. And often it was an opportunity to share resources and things like that, but with each other and best practices, and if somebody's done something that worked, that we could impart to our businesses. And so some of my work focused on what are other communities doing that I can then share back with the businesses. So that was part of it. Some of it was information coming from the Agency of Commerce that we could then share with businesses or just be aware of for ourselves. There were often instances where it was resources that were coming in terms of federal funding and things like that that were going to be released. But it was us getting a better understanding so that we could have individual conversations with businesses. So I had a lot of those. And one thing that I found really interesting, kind of coming back to this idea of relationships, is I was often the first phone call from a business, which surprised me a little bit because the information was really coming from the state or the federal level. But what they were saying to me is that they trusted that I would be able to help them navigate it. And so I wasn't the one to answer the question necessarily, but I was the one to put them in touch with the right person. And I think it was a time where people were feeling incredibly vulnerable, and there was a lot of information coming at them to try to distill on their own. So that was something that was it felt good in the sense that they could trust me as the BMP entity to be able to put them in touch with the right people. There was also a lot of, what are other businesses around the state doing? Let's jump on these calls and find out, what businesses in Montpelier are doing. And so it was individual conversations with folks in certain towns to say, okay, what's your bookstore doing? Like, can I share that? And so that took up a lot of it. Amy, what else am I forgetting? I feel like
college.
Oh, right, of course, the college and the surveys. So many surveys. There were at least 4 or 5 surveys that we were asked specifically to distribute. And then yes, the college ended up using the BMP for business communication, essentially. So it was, when the tent for deliveries was being set up, we communicated that to the restaurants to let them know that, this was going to be the procedure going forward to be able to deliver food safely to the college. What was appropriate to expect in terms of students quarantining. That was information that we were asked to convey to the businesses so that they were aware. When Chief Hanley had masks, I actually brought those around to the businesses. So that they had them. So, we really were kind of boots on the ground in every way as the sort of first connection to our businesses. And then even now, right now I'm executing the 10-day 35K giveaway. So that is something that came about through the Agency of Commerce Regional Marketing Grant. So BMP applied in conjunction with Bristol Virgins and the Chamber of Commerce. And so we got a $40,000, we got 40, each of us got 10. So we got 40,000, 5,000 was spent on marketing and promotion and sort of the overhead of it. And 35,000 was turned into currency. And so the 3 organizations created the plan, and we stuffed all the envelopes and we distributed them with a schedule to all of the retailers that were participating. And, just as a side note, all of these things, like that grant in particular, it has $0 of admin. And so I probably put about 40 hours of work into that program, which is fine. It's part of my job. It's part of what we do. It's meant to help the businesses, which is 100% in line with what the BMP is doing. But there are a lot of those kinds of things that we've been sort of asked to take on this year. And, that's the reality of what we've tried to adapt and do at the same time as the rest of the stuff.
appreciate that, because that is a lot of what I was hearing, and what struck me as you were and Amy were both describing this to Fahad and I is, if you didn't do it, who would have done it?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I couldn't think of who that would have been. And Fahad and I talked about that afterwards, and we were sort of elusive on some of these. So I'm glad you had a chance to explain that to
Thank you
those,
for the opportunity.
everybody. So
Yeah.
thanks again.
Dan.
Yeah, just one quick comment. I'm glad Karen got a chance to explain that, because as a past downtown business owner, she was extremely helpful during the crisis and did a lot of creative things in town. But just a quick comment about Karen and Amy, since the two of them have kind of teamed up here over the last couple of years, I think BMP has really taken off, and I've seen it come from, over my time in town, I've seen it come from an organization that did nothing and had little value to, particularly in the last few years, to something extremely valuable. And you can see their list of accomplishments and what they do for the downtown. And I think it's vitally important. And thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Heather.
Can I make, oh, am I supposed to do that?
Yeah.
You want to give Amy a chance? I can wait.
Okay. Amy.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate your comments. And I just want to acknowledge that that Karen has worked tirelessly for this organization. And when she was hired, however many years ago, 8 maybe, you know, for a salary for a part-time employee, and for the entire time she's worked for this organization, she's gone above and beyond. And I know, given the circumstances of the global pandemic and how that impacts finances on municipalities and whatnot, we realize that the timing of a request for an increase in funding might, on the surface, seem a little bit out of place or out of sorts. But we're just so grateful for the support of the community and the select board. We're just hoping that translates to the support for Karen, so that you know, some of these administrative costs, they do warrant going into her pocket and you know, allowing us as board members to think about giving her the recognition that she deserves and has earned, as well as establishing and continuing to establish the funding source for the organization, so that we can focus our efforts on doing what we do rather than just fundraising for the sake of fundraising. So we certainly do appreciate the board's time in hearing what we have to say.
Thanks, Amy. Heather?
So I had a note to make a comment about the drive-through trick-or-treating, but it's probably better stated here. I just, you know, huge thank you to Karen for organizing that event, you know, to Home Health and Hospice for supporting it along with Shaw's. And I just, you know, the community businesses that participated, who, you know, who dressed up and, you know, decorated their places of business. I mean, just wonderful job. I mean, because just so much stuff getting canceled, and just taking the opportunity to really say, well, what can we do that's safe, was just really impressive. And it was also a lot of fun. And I have to tell you, I had way more fun doing that than I ever did trick-or-treating down Main Street. But that's speaking as a parent. So anyway, I just want to say kudos to Karen, and thank you to all the business partners and supporters. Way to go for thinking outside of the box and making something special for the community.
Thank you, Heather. I will just say, I'm a little sappy, but it was like good for my soul to see that, because it felt exactly like what was needed at the time. It was families that saw businesses putting the effort in, and then it was the businesses seeing how appreciated that was in real time, and it just, I think it was exactly what our community needed from each other at the time, and it felt really good to be part of it. So thank you.
I think Lindsay was next.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I know we probably have to have a conversation about money and where we will find it. But, you know, at the end of the day, I feel like the work that the BMP does is crucial to our town at this point, especially at this juncture. I can't imagine moving through this transition with COVID and the downtown you know, construction ending and so much transition with downtown businesses without the work that you're doing. You know, you're absolutely vital to what's going to be happening moving forward. So, you know, I just wanted to express my appreciation, and, you know, you certainly have my vote for, for being funded.
Thank you.
You're getting them to tip their hand, Karen. You guys are succeeding here, so. All right, I'm okay. One last one, Farhad. I want to move on here.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to mention that, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, BMP was the go-to organization for all the businesses to go to. Experience Middlebury was resourceful for the businesses to announce their timings, what's available, what's not available, what's closed, what's open. That was a resource for them to use. And like Heather said, one of the comments I heard, actually 2 or 3 customers had mentioned that they wish the trick-or-treating comes back in the same form like they did this year, because they have so much fun doing that. And I appreciate that.
So I'll just echo Amy's thanks to you all. We, regardless of what ends up happening in terms of the budget, the BMP is so grateful for the board's support of our organization, for Kathleen's support of our organization, for the rest of the staff support. We really could not do anything in this town without all of that. So so we really appreciate it, and we understand that you guys have some hard decisions ahead of you, and we know that you are supportive of this organization regardless of how that goes, and we do thank you for that.
You just encapsulate that very well. We do support your organization. We see a lot of benefit in it, and thanks for presenting to us. We have a lot to process over the next couple months.
Yep.
So I'm not going to tip my hands, but I will tell you that we see great value in the work you do, and thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Night.
Good night.
Chris, can you get Dan on with us?
Okay.
Dan, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You're in the dark.
Yeah, what's with that? Start my video, okay.
Try turning your video on.
Yeah, it has to.
There we go.
Once Chris or whoever clicks it, then it has to go through a restart every time.
Yep.
Okay, so in front of you is a change order request for the building reuse project down at the police station. I think Kathleen, yeah, there's a great photo. I'll just talk through this. So that white, excuse me, that white stain you see on the side is a calcium deposits that were leached off of the roof cap, which is now no longer there. You see a kind of a gray horizontal line at the top of the roof. But before that, there was these concrete products that leached calcium deposits all over the side of the building. The contractor tried a few different techniques and finally had another contractor come up with it's a combination of grit and water, if you will, to try to remove that. So this change order is to do the cleaning of that of those deposits. that was $4,600 out of this change order. And then, I don't know, Kathleen, maybe you can point to, you see over the doors, there's these holes where light fixtures used to be. And even at the top portion of the upper part of the roof, there's several of these, fixture or telephone wire anchorments around the building that needed to be filled in so there doesn't get any water down in the walls. And so we had the contractor take a look at the entire building and then ask them to price out, go around and repointing any of the brick mortar that needed to be done, as long as it was the same contractor there. So the price to do all of that is $4,100. Of course, he needed a boom to do that, and there's a couple of deducts as part of it, and that was a credit for power washing the building. And then there was the architect had originally specified a ceiling of the brick, but we've discovered that it really doesn't need to do that. So that's also coming as a deduct. So this change order is to take care of the building cleaning and the repoint the mortar and patch those penetrations around the building. So the grand total of that comes to $9,931. And I'm requesting you to approve that change order. And just so you know where we're at with the project, including this change order, will be just a few dollars more than $81,000 remaining in the project, remaining in the project. So it certainly fits within the budget, and requesting you to approve that.
Questions of the board? Lindsay?
Yeah, I know we went over this in infrastructure and I honestly just can't remember. The calcium deposits, do they harm the brick over time, or is this just a cosmetic problem?
It's cosmetic. It looks horrible.
It does. It definitely does.
We're going to have this whole finished front facade of the building, new garage doors, new concrete apron, new asphalt, and then we've got this ugliness off to the side. So yeah, not worth it.
If there's no questions further, then pleasure of the board.
I'll move to approve change order number 18020 for the police department building reuse project for the total cost of $9,931.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify with a thumbs up. All right, Dan.
All right. Thank you very much.
Good work.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night. Well, you just took him out of there.
Yeah. I wasn't fast enough.
Look was coming to grab him.
I wasn't fast enough, but obviously, considering COVID, I hope when it's all done, we can plan a little tour and have some before and after photos for, to kind of remember that this is one of the first projects that I really have been involved with from start to finish, like from the start of when I started on the infrastructure committee. So
Farhad won't fall in this time when we go in the building.
Yeah, if nobody pushed him in.
Oh my God, I forgot.
I think it was Kathleen who said, go ahead.
No.
Okay, Kathleen, do you want to go through the Small Business Saturday?
Right, so you have before you a Small Business Saturday proclamation, which this effort started in 2012. This annual event encourages residents and communities across the nation to support small businesses, which represent 99.9% of all firms with paid employees in the United States, on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. This year's Small Business Fact Sheet encourages everyone to share joy and shop small all season long. And so the proclamation is in your packet.
It should be all signed off now, I believe. or close?
Very close.
Okay. All right, Dan, check warrants. Dan, your mic.
I imitating Nick is what I was doing. So I
You're a
moved
fast
to,
learner, by the way.
yes, it was quick. Yes. I moved to approve total expenditures in the amount of $5,311,613.05, consisting of $5,207,233.73 for accounts payable and $104,379.32 for payroll for the period of October 28th, 2020 through November 10th, 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, signify with a thumbs up. Okay. Kathleen?
So building on Dan's reading of the motion, may have appreciated that that was larger than the amount we usually have. And that is because of the school payment that's included of $4.5 million. And all of our agencies are included in this warrant, which pivots off the payment of the first tax installment due date, which is November 16th. So payments are due in the town treasurers by the end of the day on November 16th, as a reminder. As a holdover from our last meeting, I'm giving you a brief update on the Policy Review Committee's work on the graffiti policy. Working from the legal memos previously provided by Town Council and VLCT and additional online research, the Policy Review Committee met on September 30th to take up the board's request to consider possible enhancements to the board's policy prohibiting writings and markings on public property. However, given the consistent emphasis found in these sources on content neutrality, the lack of distinction made under law for the medium used to create graffiti, permanent versus non-permanent, and the potential legal liability public entities face for perceived viewpoint discrimination, the committee was unable to articulate new language to support or enhance the policy. Committee members, in fact, agreed to recommend that the Select Board revise the policy to prohibit all writings and markings on public property. While recognizing that there may be an interest in creating a formal structure and process to evaluate and approve requests for creating art on town property, the committee felt that such an effort was beyond its charge. If the board would like to discuss the Policy Review Committee's recommendation further, we can schedule a time on a future agenda to do so. And that concludes my town manager's report.
Any questions of Kathleen? Okay. I guess that takes us to board member concerns. Dan?
I'm going to miss Victor, and that's all I got.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Farhad?
Yes, we will miss Victor. We wish the best of luck for him. I speak on behalf of the board when I say that he had been a positive role model for all of us, and he will be sorely missed.
Thank you, Farhad. Heather?
Thanks, Brian. Everything that I sort of had on my list is we've already talked about the voting, thanks to Anne. Obviously, thank you to Victor. Certainly going to miss him. I enjoyed sparring with Victor, and I will miss that opportunity. And then, of course, I talked about the BMP and the trick-or-treating, and so I think I've pretty much covered everything, and so thank you.
Okay, thanks, Heather. Nick?
Once again, thanks to Victor for all of his time. He's a good friend and a great colleague. And I'm glad you mentioned the fact, Brian, earlier, that we will still have one day the dinner for him. He's been a participant in many of those, and so if there's somebody who really deserves one, it's him, and Betty as well. So we look forward to that day.
Thanks, Nick. Lindsay?
Yeah, you know, what everybody's saying, we will of course miss Victor tremendously. I will especially miss having somebody on the board who knew the law so well. You know, there were so many times where he chimed in with the process and how it's supposed to go, and he just knew it, which was impressive. And I hope that he will call in as a concerned citizen, maybe in his bathrobe and some slippers, to give us his opinion. And I hope we continue to hear from him, for sure.
Thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, I will miss his presence on the board. He was a great influence on the board, and I think he's a good friend of all of ours. So, by the way, I just got a note from my sister, and she found a document that said that 50 years ago today, my father started our business. So,
Congratulations.
kind of neat thing.
Speaking of good men,
Missing a good man this evening now. So
You completed at 50, I completed at 25.
Congratulations, Brian.
Thank you.
all right. Hey, I would seek a motion for adjournment then.
Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. So all in favor of adjourning at 8:56, signify with thumbs up. All right. Thank you for another very nice meeting. Have a good evening, everyone.
good night,
See you all.
everybody. Thanks.
Good night.